G'day and welcome to Mark and Sam After Work. Today I want to do a video inspired by, I suppose, a little bit of research I've recently done to many years of shooting, analysing looking for precision in both mine and other people's shooting and working with rifles and bits and pieces. I suppose I'll get onto what I'm trying to say. Basically is that some of the, as we all know, some of the information out there, be that on the internet, be that in gun shops, be that in some instruction courses, that sort of stuff, some of it is very good and some of it needs to be taken with a grain of salt. What I'm actually talking about here is some stuff I ran into when I was doing some research on ways to use or to shoot using a tripod. Now, it's something that I have done very little of, so I would not profess to be an expert by any means. But when I have done it, I've found it's very easy for me to be very accurate with just following my fundamentals and doing it properly, and then doing naturally what I found worked best. So I knew that that was the case, but before I did a video about it, which I recently did, shooting with a tripod, I would do some research and see what the experts out there have to say about how they do it. I ran into stuff that I found quite, well, I suppose not something that would suit me at all, and not something that I really have a lot of engineering agreements with. And I suppose I want to explain that. I want to put things forward in a much more general term. And I would qualify that none of what I saw out there was particularly wrong for those individuals or for particularly wrong for some of the things they were doing. But if it was put more forward as this is the only way you should do it, and it's fundamentally wrong if you don't do it that way, and listen, I have quite a large bit of disagreements with that way of putting things. To start off with, what I would go with is the true basics or fundamentals, or however you want to put it, of precision shooting. There is definitely engineering principles, physics principles, which I've always used. I'm not an engineer, I'm a mechanic. I have been engineering in various forms in the way I do my job, in the way I do my sport, in the way I do anything, with using engineering and physics principles the whole time. That's how my brain works. But I don't have a bunch of letters after my name. So what I would talk about is that that is where the basics, the true fundamentals of precision shooting comes from. Newton's law, equal and opposite reaction, all the different things I can get into, but what I'm actually talking about is what that rifle does. It works with handguns as well. I'm talking about precision shooting in rifles in this case. It actually works with any form of targeting. In the precision rifles thing is what the rifle does in the way it performs, its engineering processes, what it does during recoil, how the bullet is released into the explosion or the burning of the gases, all those bits and pieces, all the physics and engineering principles involved with that are definitely key to accuracy. The human, the bit that we are, the shooter, we can help it a little tiny bit, but largely what we do best is we stuff it up. We are the problem for the accuracy. If we're taken out of the equation to some degree or another, the rifle will only do its job better. Isn't completely the case, but that's largely the case. We're more likely to stuff it up than we are to help it, but there are some principles beyond that point. So when someone starts talking about how a human should do their job exactly, whether that's, as I've spoken about before, with prone shooting where people need your ankles on the ground and your legs spread out and all that sort of stuff, that needs to be in that place. No, I disagree with that. Might work for you, might work for some, doesn't work for all. When it talks about the tripod shooting, I was seeing quite a bit of stuff talking about standing square, with square feet directly behind the rifle and squaring everything up, square shoulders and square feet behind the rifle on a tripod system. Largely for me, I disagree with that completely. Now, I'm not saying it's not right for some people, but to me, the principles are wrong here. It's treating a human like it's a square post gate where it's solid and rigid, and a human isn't solid and rigid. A human is something that is, we've got twisty bits and flexy bits and bendy bits, and we're all different shapes and we're all different muscle tensions, and our muscle memories are doing things. There's so much going on with us. So I look at it a different way. I want the rifle to do the right thing. That's what I want. You can be doing double backwards somersaults on the other end of the rifle. If that rifle does the right thing, I don't care what you're doing. There are things that'll help you. To me, if I'm going to stand up and do anything, if I stand with my feet one side to the other side, I'm real easy to push over. I have no force backwards and forwards. I have to bend and duck and wobble to do that sort of stuff. So as I'm going to address anything in a straightforward manner, if I want to push it, I'll put my feet, you can't see my feet, but I'm at a 45 side of things, so I've got my right foot back. That's where I then can push heavily, I can move side to side, my hips can adjust for things. This is a stance, this is how you do anything if you've got the choice of staying like that. So that's what I will tend to move my feet to that level to one or another, because I want to give stability, not use my system for stability. I want to give stability to my system. My way of doing it. I'll also do that rather than the straightforward and try and do things from square shoulders. I shoot a tripod like I shoot a offhand shooting. Now I can honestly say that I'm a larger frame, that suits me more. That's how I do things, and listen, for other people the square frame may work very well. I would like to say, what I'm not trying to say is that anyone is wrong in that side of things. What I would say is that, and I suppose, listen, as I said, humans are the flexible piece, and do what works for you. I have engineering principles involved in what I'm doing, but it's about making sure that rifle's doing the right thing. If the rifle's wobbling when I shoot it, and I suppose that's where I'll go quickly too, is what I've always done. From when I first started to really turn up the wick on trying to shoot more accurately and try and understand it, which was also trying to turn in how I could explain it. I was happy doing just what I was doing, but when I then needed to try and people asking questions, people wanted to know more, and I was starting in my YouTube side of things, I was using cameras, a couple of angles, just some shots of what's happening to the side, will tell you what's happening with up and down of the rifle and that side of things. A shot over the top, looking down to see what if the rifle's wiggling on recoil. These are relevant features. The simple engineering feature of here is the more I can make that rifle go straight back under recoil. How it comes forward is not relevant to the shot actually. It might give you some other clues, but how it comes back on recoil. If it is instantly kicking to the side, it's more likely to influence where the shot placement is. As I've said many times, if it's exactly the same every time, you're fine. But generally, if it's got a sideways movement, it's not going to be exactly the same all the time. And you'll tend to find if it's got a sideways movement, it's also got an elevation movement, you'll tend to find a group is opening up because of that recoil control. So I try and get it to go straight back. That's what I want to do. That's what I analyze things to do. And I would say that that's where the engineering side of it is the most key feature, how the human engages with the rifle and what the rifle's doing. But it doesn't really matter on the other side of it. If you're super comfortable in an awkward position, I suppose I'll go into a little bit more explanation there of making sense of what I'm trying to say. In a free recoil style of shooting, and this is more F-class side of things, heavy rifles on skids, they tend to run straight backwards, they'll have a platform to run on that type of thing. You'll tend to find a lot more of those people in a prone position shooting to the side, where the legs are to the side, the shoulders here, and the human does a bit of a flex. The human flexes out of the road. But the thing is, the rifle is under enough control where that first bit of movement is straight back. It isn't meeting any major resistance, so it runs straight back, so it's a nice accurate way to do it. In a prone form of shooting, which I do, which is where I'm not letting the bipod is grounded and I'm using the body to absorb the recoil, the human to absorb the recoil, I feel I'm able to control a little more of harmonics by doing that sort of things. I'm using the big squishy human to do that job. The negative is if you get it, you are then influencing the rifle right from the beginning, so you have more ability to stuff it up. I believe, and what I've seen, you have more ability to help it also, but you're engaging the human more. So then if you're to the side and doing that same thing, you'll tend to find that the rifle is kicking out to the side here simply because your body's asking it to. As said, in a free recoil situation, the body's doing the same thing, but it's not influencing the rifle as much. In a preload style of prone shooting, the body is influencing more, so that then kick to the side matters. So I'll tend to be straight behind the rifle and try and center it up a lot more to try and do that. Now this depends on all the features of what you're trying to do. It doesn't mean one's wrong or one's right. What it means is it works for, if you focus on the engineering or the physics of the rifle, is where you'll find the key to this. So that's going to be the same to the likes of tripod shooting. And I'd also say in the tripod shooting is one of the things that I would class one of the new sides of the sport. The equipment that's coming, the tripods that are coming, all that sort of things are changing all the time. And you'll see that the techniques are changing all the time. So if someone is telling you this is the only way to do it, this is where all your keys are, this is exactly what's going on, then listen, you're probably going to find in 2 or 3 years' time they're going to be singing a different tune. If it works for them, awesome. If it works for you, awesome. If it doesn't, or even if it does, take it with a grain of salt. Do try and look at the whole thing rather than the little bit. And I suppose that's where there's another one I heard on which was talking about trigger position and exact trigger position. There is the engineering principles of exactly where your trigger sits, the finger sits on the trigger and squeezing right through for that straight line of push or straight line of pull, all that sort of stuff. Yes, very relevant in some circumstances. In a lot of circumstances that I shoot, it just isn't that relevant. I have larger hands, it's probably a little easy for me, but sometimes right on the tip, sometimes on the side, sometimes it's really about comfort, it's about a clean break, it's about not influencing the rifle, the bit that I really am concerned about. There is better ways to learn, and there's better ways not to learn, but I suppose what I would say is if you are shooting really well and you aren't doing one of these things but your group's really good, there's nothing to worry about and don't need to fuss about it. What I am trying to say is, I suppose when you hear something on the internet and an instruction course, that sort of stuff, and it is the only way and the human must be this shape and it must do this and it must perform like this way or must do things with this feature, don't be a stick in the mud at the class and go with it and learn it, but take it with a grain of salt. If it doesn't fit you, ultimately doesn't matter. It's allowed to be. That's a bit. We're humans. We're flexible creatures, and I suppose credit where credit's due for sure, but don't take anything out of context. I believe that there is always a better way for you individual to do things, but it isn't necessarily their way. It isn't necessarily a set way. Dogma, training, perception, all things can change what the human actually needs or what the human thinks that the human needs, and we've just got to be smart enough to be able to figure it out, make it work for us. Anyway guys, that was getting a little bit complicated. I hope I didn't tread on too many toes or that sort of stuff, but I do, listen, we're all very capable of it. Some people do it a very different way than others, and nothing against that. The principles should attach to the rifle, to the ammunition, and making sure what's going on in that physical world. The human, we've just got to not stuff it up. Anyway guys, I think you get my picture. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for checking in, and we'll catch you next time.